Hey everyone, Clint Butler here from SIA. And this is test number 43. Is bounce rate a ranking factor? Let's get into it. All right, so I think you got to be a little bit clear about kind of how bounce rate is measured and to define the different. I want to say there's different versions. So let's go. If you're doing a Google search for wooden pipes and you click on the page and you immediately go back, that is termed in the SEO community as ping ponging. You're ping pong, you went right back. And I believe Google can measure that because when you do it, especially these days, you'll click on a link, you go to the page, you'll go back, and then Google pops up related searches underneath the listing that you clicked. So it's obviously it can see that you're doing that. So ping ponging as a theory, is actually pretty sound. And then there's bounce rate. Now they say the higher your bounce rate, the worse your page will do in SEO. But what if you have a landing page? If you have a landing page and you have a form, they fill out the form and that goes into whatever their systems are or whatever, you will have a 100% bounce rate on a really, really good landing page, a really good converting website that's generating phone calls will be a 100%, 80 to 100% bounce rate. Because the way Google Analytics measures it is you go to a website, you read it, and then you go to another page, then that affects your bounce rate percentage. If you go to a website, stay on that page, and don't trigger any other events within Google Analytics, you very well could have a 100% bounce rate. So now that goes into let's trigger other events. What do we do like that? And you can actually lower your bounce rate to, if you wanted to, if you had enough events firing off, you could probably load into the 2% range. So really, does all of that matter? And is it working? Now, this is kind of a test that would suggest that bounce rate is actually a thing. And that you could, if you manipulate your bounce rate, you'll get higher rankings, and then it'll be considered a ranking factor. And honestly, even with this test, I'm not really convinced, just because of the way that it was set up. Is 5 identical test pages were created. The third one was the experiment page, and then they sent Mechanical Turk projects to the web pages to manipulate the bounce rate. And what's not clear in the write ups, and this is why we do a lot of testing, is because we want to get better at the write ups and stuff. Is one, was there a set task that they had to do? Was there a time limit that they could be on the page? Do they just go to the page and sit? Were there other triggers set up to manipulate the bounce rate? I.e., scrolling the page, it could be a trigger, and that manipulates bounce rate. Um, how was that all done? And then, was the exact same amount of people sent to each one of the experiment pages? Because let's say all the control pages, because there's 5 pages, right? And then one's the test page, the other 4 would be the controls. All 4 of those got like half of the traffic of the test page. Let's say that happened. That could manipulate the test results because that test page is obviously getting more traffic. And maybe it's the traffic signal that resulted in the number 1. So this is a great example of why a test write-up needs to be clear, why you should have the full specifications, why you should see what happened in the test, and how that was set up. And this is definitely the way we're leading towards in the 2021 test results, and kind of being a little bit more clear on the entire setup and the different factors that are moving it. Because today, honestly, I don't think bounce rate's a ranking factor. I can keep mine at 45%, and it doesn't mean I'm going to rank it higher or lower than anything else. I see that as a conversion tool. I'm more worried about the ping pong effect. Them coming to the site and then leaving and going right back to Google. And it's a little bit harder to measure that, other than they open the site and then they don't do anything. They don't create any other triggers and they close the site. Then I could probably assume that's a ping pong. and then that might mess up my my bounce rate. That'll keep it up closer to 100%. So when I see that, I know that I have a conversion problem and not necessarily an SEO problem. And I'm probably ranking for keywords that are not necessarily what my page is about. And I somehow optimized for those or sent the wrong signals to Google, and I'm getting the wrong kind of traffic, which happens way more often than we'd all like to admit. All right, so that's test 43. Is the bounce rate a ranking factor? Test says yes. Experience says no. It's definitely something we got to look at again. I appreciate you. Hit the thumbs up if you like this video. Subscribe. Hit the bell notifications, and we'll see you on the next one.